Hello and happy Monday to all of the newest AmeriCorps Vistas. I am excited to be able to join you virtually and say thank you. Thank you for being willing to dedicate a year of your lives to serving your neighbors, your communities, your fellow Americans, and many more. So I wanted to start that way. I am very excited that you are doing our PSO blend over the next few weeks, and that hopefully means that you have gotten the start at your sites this very day as opposed to otherwise, and just excited about that. You know this, you are all from different places, you're from many different states around the country, including some territories and commonwealths as well, and you're going to be doing a variety of different things. But all of that will put you smack dab in the group of fabulous AmeriCorps Vistas who have served over the last 51 years to make our country a better place. As you will learn in the history coming up, this idea of a domestic Peace Corps came from President Kennedy right after the Peace Corps was created. He was killed before he could make it happen, and so it fell to both his brother, Robert Kennedy, and his successor, President Lyndon B. Johnson, to make happen. And so in between the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, VISTA was created as part of the Economic Opportunity Act. And since then, we have had about 200,000 of your fellow Americans serve as VISTA members. As you'll also learn, about 23 years ago, AmeriCorps was created, and we came under that umbrella and with the Corporation for National and Community Service. And later this year, we will swear in our millionth AmeriCorps member. And so we are very, very glad that VISTA is a huge part of that, the role that you will play in helping people out of poverty, in helping build the capacity of your host organization, in enriching yourself, in developing your skills and your abilities to carry you into whatever is your next step afterwards is pretty darn exciting. So I am grateful that you've chosen to join AmeriCorps Vista. I'm thankful that you've all made the decision to start today, and I am excited to get a chance to meet some of you over the course of the year and see what great work comes out of what starts today. So thank you again, congratulations, and all the best.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, welcome everyone. This is, welcome to AmeriCorps Vista. This is the first webinar of your orientation. This is launching your Vista service. My name is Calvin Landrum.
And I'm Eric Powell.
And we'll be your host today from Vista headquarters in Washington, D.C.
Welcome again to AmeriCorps Vista. You're about to join a national movement with a very rich history. There are 120 Vistas representing 28 states on this webinar alone. This month, 380 Vistas will be starting service, with almost 3,600 joining the program this summer. That's a lot. Right now, there are more than 5,000 Vistas serving in rural and urban areas in all 50 states, and as Max said, in several territories and tribal nations. If you believe that we have a responsibility to bring an end to poverty and are committed to working within communities, you've joined the right program. And based on the responses in our chat activity, it looks like your interests and motivations are well aligned with VISTA. Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA, has been serving and supporting, at times leading the charge for social equity for more than 50 years. Our strength comes from the talent, motivation, and energy of our members, soon to be you. So I want to thank you for stepping up to share your skills and passion to serve the community. Seeing your comments in the chat activity before the session began, it seems that many of you were attracted to VISTA because of its legacy. It's an honor for me to welcome you on behalf of the VISTA program. I also hope you feel the warmth and support from your fellow Vistas. Throughout this orientation, not just this webinar, we'll help you make connections with each other.
Warm fuzzies, everyone's making connections. We're so excited. So I'm so glad that this is happening. So here is what we hope that you get out of today's webinar. We'd like for you to be able to describe what the PSO blend is and fully participate in it. We want you to be able to describe the mission of VISTA and outline its programming principles. Show how individual VISTA assignments relate to the VISTA mission, and enter VISTA service well informed. We want you to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and really how to get that done. So if we were in a face-to-face training, we'd have to talk about housekeeping issues, things like where the breakout rooms are, what groups you're in, when do you eat, and don't smoke in your room. And we need that in a virtual training too. So VISTA's pre-service orientation, or PSO, like any orientation, is designed to provide you with fundamental, foundational information, and resources to start you off well. And this can be done in a number of ways. Face-to-face, in-person training on one end of the spectrum, and online training like we're doing here on the other. You're in an orientation that has combined online tutorials and webinars with in-person training and action learning at your VISTA site. In other words, this is a blend of components that all fall along your training spectrum. Get it? PSO blend, blended, nice. You got it. Technically, the PSO blend began with those self-directed courses you took earlier on the VISTA campus. If you remember, what are they? Civil rights and inclusiveness, terms and conditions, those things. And this webinar is the kickoff to a facilitated 4-week curriculum.
Absolutely. But why a PSO blend? The PSO blend is truly a classroom without walls. Action learning rather than classroom learning. And instead of a front-loaded learning program, the PSO blend gives you an opportunity to apply what you've learned and what you're learning while you're doing it. Just like service learning, our aim is to create time for you to reflect on what you're doing.
Yeah, but, let's be honest. Pausing to reflect often, runs counter to our culture. I mean, for example, we almost all pride ourselves on our multitasking abilities. In fact, you're probably doing it right now, texting, snacking, half listening. I'm talking to you, Megan Brown, I can see you. Robert McCann, I see you in this chat, talking to you out there. So, the thought of stopping our activity for an hour or so to identify what we value and what lessons we will carry with us can really be out of character. If you add our needs for speed to this process, then we could really, push your buttons.
On the positive side, though, you're already at your site and can bring real issues to the training. You can also go to your supervisor and get project-level information and answers that we can't provide at a regional face-to-face PSO. The PSO blend does also provide flexibility for sponsors to bring on new VISTAs when they need them, because we in the VISTA program can expand or shrink, create or counsel a blend training relatively quickly in order to meet the needs of our sponsors. And any problems with travel are certainly removed. We do hope that you'll agree that while there may be challenges with this training model, the blend was your best option.
Totally. So the onboarding forms in MyAmericorps and the tutorials on the campus are the pieces of the blend that you've already completed. You've done all those things, and that's how you got to this point. We built a curriculum based on your having carefully reviewed those tutorials. We don't want to waste people's time reviewing, you for what we've already asked you to review. But the information in that material is essential to your service. It's going to definitely lay the foundation for everything coming up over the course of the next year. All that information was your living allowance amounts and schedules, state taxes on your allowance, health care, the education award versus the stipend, leave, emergency support, and so much more. All that is included in everything that you should have gone over before we got here today. We really don't want any of you to be thrown out of the program because you didn't understand the rules, or next April you're facing state taxes because you didn't understand the tax implications of your benefits. We'd really hate for that to happen. So we will hold you responsible for having read and accepted the terms, benefits, and conditions of your VISTA service. If there are aspects of your service that you just don't understand, the next few days is the time to raise your questions, either with your supervisor, about your project and assignment, or you can call the National Service Hotline and speak to the VISTA Member Support Unit about policy questions and your benefits. These are all resources that are available to you. That being said, on Wednesday, we will talk about the more complicated issues around benefits, but very briefly, and then point you to follow-up webinars in our regular professional development series.
Today is an exciting day because it's day one, your first day of service at your site. We're so excited. And here we are on that webinar. We'll administer the oath of service at the end of this webinar, which is your official entrance into VISTA. You will then be given 2 documents from your supervisor. The oath of service is to sign and return to your supervisor, and you'll also get 2 fingerprint cards with instructions. The oath needs to be signed and returned today. The fingerprints need to be completed and returned within 5 weeks, but the sooner the better. Fingerprints are needed, of course, to conduct a criminal history background check. On Wednesday of this week, we'll come back together to share more about how the VISTA's development model works in communities and close out the webinar portion of the blend. Meanwhile, your supervisor will provide you with on-site orientation and training. That training will introduce you to the organization and the community you're serving and discuss your VISTA assignment, which essentially is your job description. And also interspersed with your work, you will have some field work to do, which will follow up with virtual meetups.
Ooh, virtual meetups. That sounds fun. I like those. So the virtual meetups are made up of about 30 of you guys and a facilitator. You'll explore what you're learning about your organization and your community and take a closer look at your VISTA assignment. Weeks 3 and 4 are going to focus on poverty, both nationally and locally, which is what the VISTA program is really all about. In week 3, you'll develop a community profile, which is a fascinating process that you can use in guiding your work and your VISTA assignment. In week 4, you'll again gather with your online classmates in a virtual meetup and then complete the orientation. So we're going to be all hanging out over the next 4 weeks, learning about our community's poverty, your assignment, your project, all that really good stuff.
But on a technical level, which we know can be challenging, we're actually going to be using 3 systems or platforms to conduct the PSO blend. The VISTA Campus, which you use for the online tutorials, WebEx, which you're currently in now, and the online classroom, which you'll visit later. So the technology is not necessarily hard, but we want to make sure that you're aware that there are 3 systems and each has its own unique web address.
Definitely. So, like I said before, you're going to be part of a group of about 30 VISTAs in a facilitated online class. You'll complete a number of assignments that will guide you in exploring issues of poverty and how your assignments were developed to address these issues. You'll also deepen your understanding of capacity building, which is the foundation of your service in VISTA. The online class is a learning environment with an opportunity to share and develop your ideas and experience with the facilitator in a small group through, regularly scheduled virtual meetups and classroom forums. If anyone's ever, taken an online class through your college, it's not too dissimilar. Developing a connection with the VISTA community is a challenge in a virtual environment. You're not sharing dinner with 100 people, and you don't have a roommate, but on the positive side, you're also not eating hotel food, and you get to sleep in your own bed. But connecting and feeling supported by people involved in work like yourself demands more of you when communicating from a distance. Classroom, with its meetups and forum, is the first step in connecting with your fellow VISTAs.
Great. And along with that, right after this webinar, you'll get an email with step-by-step instructions for logging into the online classroom. Remember, the classroom site is not the VISTA Campus. The email, though, will be sent to the address in your MyAmeriCorps account, so please look for it and take a minute to log in today. Messages from your facilitator and VISTA colleagues and your coursework are all located on that site. If you do have any trouble logging in after receiving the instructions, we're here to help. And the email is on the screen, vistacourses@educationnorthwest.org.
Yeah. So your role in your PSO is pretty simple, but not necessarily easy. Participate with an open mind and heart. Navigating the system and showing up is step 1. Being authentic, communicating with the intent of being influenced as well as supportive is the second step. And like we said before, patience and reflection is not one of our cultural strong points, but they're essential to your success and the blend and in your service. So please take the time to learn about your assignment, which we call a VAD, your VISTA assignment description, and plan your next steps. Draw on your facilitators in your class in addition to your supervisor and colleagues at the site. You have all these wonderful resources for information. Really pull from those. And along with being mindful and planful, please meet the deadlines. Please, please, please stick to those deadlines. So just a note about onboarding forms and coursework. Everything needs to be done by close of business today. I mean, it should all be done by now. Those onboarding forms, that's entering your direct deposit information, making life insurance elections. I know I sent all of you an email a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, and showed you what you were missing. All that stuff should be done by now. But if you're not, you have until midnight tonight to complete it. Otherwise, we just can't enter you into service and pay your living allowance. So again, make sure you get those things done. If you're curious if you've done it, you can reply to my email and I'll let you know.
Absolutely. Well, we're finished with housekeeping. But if you do have any questions, either let us know in the Q&A section, ask us later on the webinar, or ask your supervisor. But we want to take some time to get to know a little bit more about each other. You've already started using the chat, so we have a question for you. What excites you most about becoming a VISTA member? Again, use the chat on the right side of the screen. If you don't see the chat panel, click on the speech bubble in the upper right corner of the screen to open it.
Let's see what people say. What are they excited about? You know what I'm excited about?
What's that?
Presenting this webinar.
That's awesome.
Let's see, but we did get all of the responsibility. Marissa says, all the responsibility. I'm excited to be trusted with such an important job. That's an excellent response, Marissa.
Yeah, kudos to you, Marissa.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It feels good, to have some responsibility, and, it's very affirming when people say, yeah, I'm giving you this because I know you can do it.
Yep.
And we know you can do it.
Having a direct role in improving my community, that's also important. VISTAs are catalysts and help build capacity in their community.
I'm looking for a way to help reform the justice system. Ooh, I like that. That's one of my personal passion projects, ex-offender reentry, prison reform, things like that. That's what I care about, so I'm on board with that one.
And I also echo Alyssa's comment. She said she's excited to give back to the community that's given so much back to her. That's, that's such a reciprocal relationship that VISTA tries to foster in the community. Man,
you guys are going in. This is so great. Excited to spend time outdoors facilitating community projects. Go Tim. That sounds fun. I also enjoy that stuff. I like to be outdoors and do things like that.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm excited to meet new people. I'm looking forward to grant writing the most. Come on, Karen. See, Karen, you're a writer. I am not so much a writer. I think grant writing would be not what I was excited about, but I'm glad for you, and we need people to do that. So thank you very much, Karen. All right, we are going to, so let's see. The VISTA program has an incredible diversity of projects, and yours will hopefully be the toughest job you've ever loved. Plus, as you can see, you're in good company. I mean, everyone in here, is really excited, about their service, and it's exciting for us to see that you're excited. Some simple advice, maybe it's sounding a little trite, but, hold on to what interests and excites you and keep reaching out to your community. So let's now turn to look at what the VISTA program is all about.
As we're just getting to know one another, let's take a look at a few milestones in history that have led us to this moment. Non-military national service was proposed, not opposed, in an essay by Henry James, The Moral Equivalent of War, published in 1910.
Yeah, and then Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was a student of James's at Harvard and was one of the first elected leaders to apply James's concepts to public policy. As president, to lift the nation out of the Great Depression, Roosevelt created an alphabet soup of programs and federal corporations. I mean, we got the CCC, the WPA, the SSA, FDIC, and the list goes on and on. And, these were inspiration, if not blueprints for AmeriCorps and CCC. AmeriCorps and the Corporation for National and Community Service, which is who you guys fall under.
Absolutely. Also, in 1961, President Kennedy established the Peace Corps and rejuvenated from Roosevelt's New Deal the idea of a corps of volunteers with a living allowance and training support. And in creating the Peace Corps, Kennedy went on record to say that the wisdom of the idea was that someday we'd bring it home to America.
Love it. Domestic. Enter President Johnson, who created the Office of Economic Opportunity, and within that office established, among others, senior AmeriCorps, Job Corps, Head Start, and the true bearer of the legacy, Vista.
Yes.
Our first volunteers were assigned, as the newspapers read back then, to the hollows of Appalachia, the slums of Hartford, Connecticut, and the camps of migrant farm workers in California. Johnson said to those first Vistas, which really remains true today, "The initials of your organization spell Vista. It is an appropriate name, for you will be opening up new vistas of hope for the poor, achievement for yourself, and greatness for your nation."
In 1993, Vista joined AmeriCorps, created by President Bill Clinton, and today is part of a family of national service programs, including AmeriCorps State and National grants, the Social Innovation Fund, AmeriCorps NCCC, FEMA Corps, and Senior Corps. In the 50-plus years of the VISTA program, some 200,000 Vistas have served. So who are these alumni, you may be wondering? Well, George R.R. Martin, author of Game of Thrones, served as a Vista.
Please don't put your spoilers in the chat. I haven't watched it yet.
Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia. Ray Magliacci, you know, click and clack of Car Talk. Jack Gertie, CEO of Land O'Lakes. And also Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Wisconsin are just a few of our 200,000. But if you're aiming to be famous because you served in Vista, you may want to rethink that plan.
Yeah, that may not work out too well. I'm still trying. I mean, I'm still trying to be famous.
It'll happen, Calvin.
Vista famous. So when asked to describe Vista, this is our elevator speech, is what you see, on the screen. The Vista program strengthens organizations that alleviate poverty through the mobilization of volunteers and resources. And there are 4 principles that underpin the program. One being ending poverty, the other empowering communities, building capacity, and creating sustainable solutions. When someone asks you, what are you doing in Vista, these are great phrases to have that you can tell them to kind of paint the picture of what your service is like.
As you can see, Vista's mission to end poverty in the U.S. is quite impressive with all the statistics. 14.5% million in the U.S. live on less than $11,892. And you can read the screen, but there's so many statistics that come out that are just staggering. But of course, ending poverty, which is at the heart of every Vista project and every Vista member, aims to end or alleviate poverty one person, one family, or one block at a time. As you can see, the statistics are sobering, if not shocking.
Yeah, it's like 4 out of 5 people in the U.S. live in danger of poverty. That's honestly unacceptable. So, empowering communities in contrast, we're going to talk about empowering communities. In contrast to parachuting in and just doing good things for people, Vistas actually live among and involve community members in planning and carrying out the project. This is often facilitated by your sponsor, but strengthening and improving communities is our long-term goal, and really what you're going to be working on over the course of the year.
And we're excited about that. Also, going along with empowering the community, one way to do that is through building capacity. Vista's job is to either increase the size of a project or increase the number of people who are touched by the project, or improve the efficiency of a project so that it takes less to perform the same work. Also, to improve the impact the project has on the community.
All right. Another pillar of our mission is I can't say that word today, sustainability. There we go. And creating sustainable solutions. So whatever you develop or create, be it a process, an IT system, materials or resources, we ask that you develop them in such a way that people will want and be able to use them when you're gone, even after the last Vista leaves your site. We have some projects that, haven't had a Vista in years, but they're still continuing that mission because of the excellent work that the Vistas did, while they had them.
Absolutely. These 4 principles that Calvin just mentioned guide community development for us. Community work requires coordination, even collaboration, and working together towards long-range goals. Progress is slow and incremental, but our work is not just about fixing stuff. It's about sharing perspectives and skills. Capacity building and sustainability are deep, challenging issues. In the next couple of weeks, we will point to resources to help build your understanding and skills.
Definitely. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit and talk about your Vista assignment. So the VAD is your work plan. Again, the VAD, the VAD, Vista Assignment Description, it's like your work plan. It's derived from the project application developed between your sponsor, community representatives, and Vista representatives. We and your sponsor use the VAD to account for your work and measure the organization's progress towards its goals. And like a work plan, it's also important that your supervisor, it's also important to your supervisor to recruit, support, and coach you throughout the year. Ask your supervisor for a copy of the project application. It'll really come in handy when you're trying to figure out, how do I fit into this whole system. The narrative section identifies the community need, describes the project's intentions, and sort of what they're going to do to address the needs of the community, and it specifies a goal that describes the impact the project will have on the community for the life of the project, which is typically about 3 years. And so by accomplishing the activities in your VAD, you help meet your organization's performance objectives, which contributes to meeting the community need. You may be the first, the second, the third Vista in as many years to serve at your organization. You may be alone or serving with other Vistas. In either case, the application and your VAD are your blueprints for the year, so we're going to focus on them for the next week or so.
Your VADs include a project goal, as Calvin mentioned, which is usually derived from the goal statement in the project's application, and one or more objectives, which describes specifically what you will achieve by the end of your service year. The member activities delineate what you will be doing, and those activities are designed to add up to the objective, and the objectives add up to the goal. Each of you has your own VAD, no matter how many of you are serving at the same project. You will have a fieldwork assignment related to your VAD. A worksheet will help you tease out the VAD's various elements and help you use it effectively. The fieldwork includes you and your supervisors, so you will have guidance from the start.
Definitely. All right, so I want to ask you all a question. Since we're on a webinar, let's take advantage of one of the other features available to us. We'd like to hear from you again. So on the right is a poll about what you think Vistas need to know. So please take a moment to answer this question. What do you think is the most important thing to know and to know well at the beginning of your Vista service? Is it about the Vista program, things like its mission, benefits, prohibitions? Is it the community that you'll be serving in? Is it the organization where you'll be serving? It is important to have volunteered or worked at the organization before, or to know its inner workings. Is that important? Or is that the specific skills for your VAD, and how important is it to have done similar work? Like, we're really curious. So take a second to answer this poll question. We'll look at your results in just a second as they pop up.
All of these, Calvin, are great choices that when you look at each one individually, Vista, the community organization, all of these are really at the heart of what a Vista does. So it's just kind of interesting to see what the results will be, because they're all critical to the success of the Vista.
Definitely. Let's see. Oh, yourself. Also, yeah, yourself. I forgot about that one. Yourself. Do you think you need to know yourself? Know yourself well before beginning your service. So once you select your answer, make sure you click the submit button. So let's see. I think it's coming. There it is. Oh, 38 of you didn't even answer. Shame. For shame.
Wow, it's a tie between the community and the specific skills for your VAD.
Yeah, no, that's true. You should definitely know your community. I mean, you're going to be working there. That's the whole reason that you're there. Agreed. And then the specifics of your VAD. Yeah. You need to know, how to do the work that is being asked of you. So again, if you haven't seen your VAD, please ask your supervisor for that document, because you're going to need it. It's essential in your Vista service. So,
definitely.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for answering that question.
Going along with that theme about making sure you have what you need to be successful in getting things done, we see that the VAD accounts for your work. So let's take a look at some of the things Vistas have accomplished recently, so you'll have a sense of what you might be doing. And these are the measurable, not the intangibles, which are often the most interesting. As you can see, in 2015, Vistas built the capacity of more than 3,000 nonprofit and public agencies. They secured $222 million. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
In cash and in-kind donations for those sponsors. That's more than twice what Congress has given AmeriCorps Vista to run the entire program. That's incredible. Vistas also recruited, trained, and assigned 1.2 million, that's a lot too, community volunteers. That means for every Vista serving in 2015, he and she brought in another 154 more volunteers to serve their clients directly. Just one more stat. The National Center for Children in Poverty estimates 16 million children in the United States, about 1 in 5, live below the poverty line. Vistas made it possible for their sponsors to serve 2.4 million of those children in after-school programs, tutoring, and assistance in food security.
Way to go, Vistas. So now we're going to ask you another question. This is a question that I really like, and I'm curious to see your answers on it. You know, so the impact that you make this year really is going to depend on you. And it also depends on your community, your Vista project, and sometimes just good old luck. So what impact do you hope to make as a Vista? You know, and by impact, we mean what will be the end result, you know, rather than what your activities look like. You know, what will happen as a consequence of your success? For example, a sustainable volunteer program for the organization, maybe a coalition of community groups working together more effectively, you know, as a result of your effort. You know, some Vistas produce innovative programming to serve the needs of the community, and others leave their organizations with a sustainable future because of the funding they were granted. So let's see what you guys have to say. See, Jake says, it will be able to continue whatever project we started together without a bump or issue. So, you know, some continuity and sustainability of your project.
Yeah, see, Sarah says that if it's successful, we hope to establish a successful program for the After School Alliance and Maine After School Network to really enhance the work that they're doing for children.
Nice. Let's see. Hillary, I hope to build a stronger relationship between Gonzaga University and the community organizations in Northeast Spokane. Very admirable. I really like that.
And Marissa, you're just on the ball. We will put more deserving families in homes by having a volunteer base that is sustainable. That's right, sustainability is at the heart of the VISTA program.
Let's see. Rachel McKinney says, hopefully more young people will develop a lifelong interest in STEM and will choose a career path in STEM field, bettering the state. Yeah, STEM, so important, and such an issue, and such an issue right now. You know, trying to bring more women into STEM and start children off sooner, and communities in poverty, I think, typically, get left out in STEM fields. So really, trying to get those, trying to, expand that. I really like that.
And way to go, Wanda. You clearly did your homework and watched the Vista Legacy video. Now, I lost it, but she quoted something directly from the Vista Legacy video, so way to go.
Yeah, Wanda. Let's see. Corolla Smith says, more veterans will know what is available to them and where to find the resources they need. Love that, and very, very important work.
The last thing I'll point out is a key element that Jasmine posted is keep the community involved. It's essential that as a VISTA you are involved with the community, but their input is so essential to improving their lives and making the change that needs to happen. So thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah. My last one that I really like, a summer camp urban farming program. Sign me up, please. I would love that. I just want to attend. I would be a counselor at your camp. Reach out to me.
That would be awesome.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks, guys. So before we move on, as we're kind of coasting downhill in this webinar, we want to quickly review what we just covered. We've looked at why we're using a blended training program. We reviewed the 4-week schedule of the PSO blend and talked about the various elements, the technology you'll use, and your role in the training. Let's see, we've looked briefly at the history of VISTA and how it relates to other national service programs. We then dove into the VISTA mission and its key principles and discussed how they relate to each VISTA assignment. And finally, we've shared with you some of the impact VISTA members have had in the past year.
So who likes action steps? I do.
I do.
Nice. We do want to make sure that you know there are a few things you need to pay attention to right after this session as they affect your benefits and might prevent us from entering you into the program. So make sure that by close of business today, you complete any of your missing onboarding forms that Calvin mentioned earlier, direct deposit, life insurance, etc. Make sure you also certify and accept the terms and conditions if you have not done so already. These are essential. And make sure that if you want to, you change from the stipend to the Ed Award if you're unsure which you need or want. Then We also want you to complete and send the oath form through your supervisor. Also, make sure you log into your online classroom, since right after this webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to that classroom. And finally, make sure to get your fingerprint kit and get them done this week if possible.
A lot of action steps.
It is.
But all very, very, very important. Yeah, onboarding forms, you know, can't stress it enough. We want you guys to get paid. So let's talk about those fingerprints. That's what Eric just mentioned. You know, the fingerprints and the criminal history check. We do this to protect the community members and volunteers we work with, yourselves included. So there's 2 convictions that automatically disqualify a person from VISTA service: any sexual offense and any violence against a minor. You know, so those 2, we're sorry, you can't serve. But there are 2 other conditions that don't necessarily disqualify you, but they could be an issue. One of those is being on probation or parole or facing charges. If your future is uncertain, it could, you know, affect your VISTA service, obviously. And the second is, you know, failure to disclose your criminal history. This is very important. First step, you need to get fingerprinted.
Yep.
You need to get fingerprinted. Get those in as soon as you can. You have 5 weeks, but don't wait until the last week because something could happen. Maybe you can't find a place. Really get that done as soon as possible. Your supervisor will provide you with fingerprinting cards and instructions for getting your prints taken, and then you'll send them here to us at VISTA. So please ask for the fingerprint kit if you haven't already gotten them. You have 5 weeks to get them in. Don't wait again. Second is that when you applied, we asked if you've ever been convicted of a crime. So you may not have disclosed everything, you know, not just 10 years back, or because you thought a DUI was a minor traffic violation, or maybe you thought, you know, because you were a minor, it was expunged. You know, if you failed to disclose any conviction, even if you thought it was expunged, fill out the criminal history questionnaire that's included with the fingerprint cards and send it in as instructed. If you have a string of arrests where the charges were dropped, it would really be appreciated if you listed those as well. But that's not required, but it is really helpful in our review. You know, again, we want you to disclose if something comes back. It makes it a lot easier process. We don't want to have to hound you and draw it out.
Absolutely.
If you just send it to us, most of the time it's okay, but we need to have that information ahead of time. So when the FBI report comes back, we'll compare it to what your disclosures are in the application and on the form. If everything aligns, you don't hear from us. If there's a conviction you haven't disclosed, it is grounds for dismissal, and there's, again, extensive follow-up that we have to do, so let's make all of our lives easier.
Continuing on with a few more next steps, we know we've just talked about a few immediate actions that you need to complete by close of business today. But now let's take a look at some other elements of the PSO blend that are coming up this week and beyond, and you'll see it on your screen. Remember that we mentioned you'll be getting an email soon after today's webinar with instructions for your online classroom. You're going to want to log in right away and start working on your 3 fieldwork assignments. The first is a Your Minute Intro. This activity guides you in creating a very short video to introduce yourself and your VISTA role to others. And these are awesome, so make sure you really highlight what your Minute Intro is.
Oh yeah, we've had some really good ones. Competition's strong.
Oh yeah. Second is your VISTA assignment worksheet that we spoke about earlier. This worksheet helps you to unpack your VISTA assignment description so you can better understand your role and what you're asked to do. And then third, how poverty is measured. This is also a fun video and explains how the official poverty rate is determined. On Wednesday, 2 days from now, we'll be back in a follow-up webinar called Accomplishing Your VISTA Assignment. It's at the same time as this one. Also, this coming Sunday night, your 3 fieldwork assignments are due. And then next Wednesday, June 22nd, you will get I'm talking to myself. You will get together online with the other 30 students in your online classroom. So it's a great way for you to network, and people who said they were interested in getting to know each other, that's a great way to do it.
Totally, make those connections. So let's talk about getting some support. If you're listening to this and you have a question about anything that we said, and you're like, your head may be swimming, it's like, well, that's all. So it's throwing a lot at me. We have lots of places for you to get assistance and help because we really want you to start off on a great foot. So as I mentioned earlier, please email vistacourses@educationnorthwest.org. If you have any trouble at all logging into your online classroom, you'll see that email address on your screen. You can also send other technical questions to this address, or better yet, once you're logged in, post to the technical questions forum in your online classroom. That way, if the question is one that your classmates also have, they'll be able to see the answer too.
Collaboration, absolutely.
Collaboration. So you also have your facilitator to help you with the curriculum, so those 3 assignments that we just talked about. Your facilitator, all the information about those can point you in the right direction, lead you where you need to be. You have your VISTA supervisor and your VISTA leader, if you have a leader, for questions about your project or your VISTA assignment description, your VAD. You can call the National Service Hotline for questions about the VISTA program, so things like policies, benefits, requirements. You'll get connected with the VISTA Member Support Unit, the VMSU. I used to work there. We love getting your calls. You have to call, ask us all kinds of crazy questions. We always have the answer. And also, if none of those work out for you, you can always reach out to your state office, for some assistance and to guide you in the right direction. A very easy way to get in touch with your state office is to email them. It's your state abbreviation at cns.gov. So if you're serving in Texas, it's going to be a tx@cns.gov, Florida, fl@cns.gov, so on and so forth.
So now we're getting to even more exciting stuff. The oath of service.
We're almost there. You're almost VISTA members.
You're now ready to take the oath of service. But to do this, you need the AmeriCorps VISTA oath form, which your supervisor should have given you. But if you don't have it handy, you can print it from the VISTA campus using the link that was just posted into the chat. I do have a few quick instructions for filling out the form. These may seem obvious, but you'd be surprised at the things people submit. And again, we want to make sure we can pay you, so the information has to be correct. First, print your full legal name, which I think you probably used in your My AmeriCorps application. Second, make sure to provide the name of the organization that is sponsoring your VISTA project, likely the organization where you are serving. Third, put the city and state where you are serving. And fourth, put today's date, which is June 13th, 2016, as the date entered on duty. After you take the oath in a minute, sign and date the form on the line in the white area. Please do not write anything in the shaded area. The supervisor does not sign the form. Once you have signed the form, you will hand the form to your supervisor, who will scan and send it to your state office.
Yeah. All right. So now that those logistics are out of the way, let's consider, for a second, the oath that you're about to take, because you shouldn't take it lightly, honestly. This is the same oath taken by all federal employees, up to and including the vice president. The president's oath is just a little bit different. It includes the phrase, to defend the Constitution of the United States. So defend, this is not necessarily a call to arms. For some, and in some positions it may be, but for most of us, defense of the Constitution may be just the opposite of using arms. The Constitution is not an administration, not even a flag. Rather, it embodies the principles that elevate us from a loosely organized group on the North American continent to a civil society. We're pledging to defend the document that contains our civil rights against all enemies. So, enemies. Let us all as community builders and change agents and simply as citizens choose our enemies carefully. More often, an enemy is a reflection of ourselves in bad light. Build bridges before you make enemies, and we will all profit. In the context of VISTA, of course, the enemy is what? Poverty. Okay, so 2 more things about the oath. First, you may replace the word swear with the word affirm, if you so choose. You may also omit the phrase, so help me God.
I want to recognize that since we're all in different locations around the country, scattered in so many sites and so many states, that we don't have the benefit of hearing each other's voices as we recite this. But it is pretty cool to know that as you're taking the oath, scores of your fellow VISTAs are doing the same thing at the same time all across America. It may seem awkward to recite the oath aloud when you're alone in a room, but really, you're taking the oath for yourself. So do it for you and make it count. Now please raise your right hand and recite the oath with me.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter. So help me God.
Yay!
Woo!
Congratulations.
We got about 120 new Vistas.
Nice.
Very
But
nice.
don't forget, make sure now that you've taken an oath, you sign and date the middle of the form, the white section, and make sure you hand it to your supervisor so they can get it to your state office today so we can go ahead and activate you as soon as possible.
Yeah, you want to get activated ASAP so you can get those benefits. All right, so before we get to our question and answer portion, we really want to know what you thought. So please, on the right side of your screen, you'll see a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. Please take a moment to answer the questions. We really like to be able to improve these webinars, and your input helps us so much. Your responses to these questions, they don't go in a black hole. We look at them, we pore over them, and use every single comment, to try to make our presentations better and effective for all of you. So please, 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 very important, take a couple minutes to do this poll. Thank you.
We know we've given you a lot to think about, and now it's time for your questions. You can ask a question using the Q&A panel located in the right-hand corner of your screen, and I'll now ask our operator to let us know how to ask a question by phone.
Thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question over the phone lines, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone. Please ensure that your line is unmuted, and please record your name when prompted so that I may introduce you to ask your question. It is *1 at this time.
And we're definitely here to answer questions, so if you do have any, we have a few minutes. We want to make sure we can answer as many as we can because now you guys are Vistas. We're excited, and we're here to support you. So keep them coming by phone or in the Q&A panel.
Yeah. We'll wait for those questions to come in. Let's see, what kind of I don't know. I can't think of what questions I would have.
So there is actually one question, Calvin, we can make sure we send out. Wanda asks, I was having audio problems. Are you able to type the things we need done today? But I think they just want to know, can we type the quick action steps they need?
Definitely. Look at that. Wow, Jessica is so fast. She is on it. So the things that need to be done, complete any missing onboard forms, search for that email that I sent you that was specific to you that said what you were missing, certify your terms and conditions if you haven't done that, change from the stipend to the education award if you're not sure what to choose. I guess I can talk about that for a second while we're waiting for questions. So the reason that we say change from the stipend to the education award, if you don't know what you're going to choose, if you remember, if you read, when you made your selection, once you choose the stipend for your into-service option, you can never change back to the education award. If you select the education award, you have 10 months to change to the stipend. So it goes in one direction. You can never change from the stipend to the ed award, but if you select the education award, you can switch to the stipend within the first 10 months of your service. So go in, make that change before you get activated for service. We don't want you stuck with an into-service benefit that you're not happy with.
And before we go to the phones, there was one other question I'll answer, and we'll go back and forth, but it was a question about missing parts of the webinar. The webinar is recorded, so it takes, a week or two for us to get the recording up on the website, but on the Vista campus, in the webinars page, there's an on-demand section, and we can also send out the link to the recording of the webinar.
Yeah.
So are there any questions on the phone while we solicit additional questions?
Yes, we have one from Marissa Johnson. Your line is open.
All right, Marissa. Hello, Marissa.
Hi. I had a question about the fingerprint paperwork.
Okay.
Do I ask my immediate supervisor in my program, or is it the Vista, like my Vista leader?
About the fingerprint cards?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be your supervisor. Your state office mails them to your project. They mail the fingerprint kits, to your project site. So your Vista supervisor should have those fingerprint kits. It's 2 cards, a couple of info sheets, and I believe a mailing label. That all got sent to your project. If, for whatever reason, you talk to your supervisor and they don't have it, you can email your state office. That's one thing you can do. Or you can email vistafingerprint@cns.gov, and we can get you helped out.
All right, thank you.
I'll go ahead and put that, or we can ask someone to put that email address in the chat so that's available for you.
Are there any other questions on the phone?
That was the only question we have at this time. As a reminder, please press *1 and record your name.
All right, so while we're waiting, we got some in the Q&A. So Eric, I'm going to ask you this question. The criminal record, how do we correct it?
Well, that could be a complicated question. If I'm understanding the question correctly, obviously if someone has a criminal record and they would have put information in their member application, but if there's something that needs to be changed or updated, that's what Calvin mentioned earlier about the criminal history
justification form?
Disclosure form. Yes. So you can't necessarily correct it, but at least for us, you're giving us the information that might show up on the FBI background check to make sure that it matches what shows up in our criminal history system. Yeah.
So if you forgot to put something on your application, you have a second chance with that sheet that's going to come with your fingerprint cards and your fingerprint kit. So that's your chance to correct that. Let's see. Donald Yoder asks, what happens if for some unforeseen reason you can't complete your one-year commitment? Things happen. Sometimes you can't, sometimes you get into your service area and find that, hey, maybe this isn't for me. Tried it out. That's honorable. And that's fine. If you, for whatever reason, can't complete your one-year commitment, it can go multiple ways. You may be eligible for a prorated end of service award based on the circumstances surrounding your exit. That's kind of it. I mean, no hard feelings usually. As long as you go out, with your head held high, and maintain your connections. No hard feelings if you can't finish your year. We hate to see you go. Love, for everyone to do their full service here, but we also understand.
Yeah, and like Calvin said, certainly we hope and are excited that all of you will be able to serve for 365 days. So if any of that changes or if there's any questions, let your state office know, and they can take you through whatever process they need.
Yeah.
I also see Cecilia asked a great question about, we talked about onboarding forms and terms and conditions and all these things are required to get activated and paid. Well, as a VISTA, how do I know that they're completed? When can I expect the first stipend, et cetera? I'll answer maybe the first question and pass it off to Calvin for other comments. So in terms of your onboarding forms and terms and conditions of coursework, if you had not completed them, you would have received an email from the VISTA Member Support Unit, the VMSU, to tell you which forms hadn't been completed. So you should be good to go. We can certainly check your individual account, but unless you heard or got any emails in your inbox or your spam folder, you should be good to go, because we'll contact you if something's missing.
Totally. So she also said, when can I expect the first stipend? Is there a schedule? Definitely a schedule. There is a schedule on the VISTA campus. If you go to the top of the search bar and type in living allowance, it will pop up for you there. I, unfortunately, off the top of my head, don't know the date of your first living stipend, but you can go there and find that. But we will have that in Wednesday's webinar. So on Wednesday, we'll definitely have that answer for you, and we will share that to the wide group because I know that is important. Jessica Birch says your first living allowance will be July 1st. Thank you, Jessica Birch, for being an excellent coworker. What a great colleague, man. She is on it.
Right before Independence Day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You get that July 1st paycheck, and then you have a long weekend. Everyone's going to have a good time.
Are there any questions on the phone? I see a couple more in the chat, but we'll go back to the phone for a minute.
No, we have no other questions on the phone.
All right. Okay. Wonderful.
I see Marissa has a question in the chat.
Okay.
So let's see. Marissa asks, if our oath form is not processed, or if VISTA says we have not completed an online form, will we not be paid? The answer is yes. It most likely means your pay would be delayed. So if, for example, if your onboarding forms are not completed, the VMSU will not activate you until they're done, so they'll be reminding you. It just means your first pay date might be pushed 2 weeks or 4 weeks later. In your oath form, same thing. That's why we make sure that you sign the oath form, give it to your supervisor. They're instructed to get it to their state office today so that the VMSU has time to activate you. But it would be a good idea for when you give it to your supervisor just to remind them that they should be sending it to their state office today so that we can get you expedited and hopefully get you paid on July 1st.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see. Sean Green says, how do you opt out of the health care offered? So, Sean, there's two options for healthcare. If you remember, when you did the as part of the onboarding required learning things, you can either that's hard to explain. I'm trying to think. Help me out, Eric.
So,
I lost that.
There are two options. You'll get an email in about a week from our International Medical Group. And as Calvin said, some of these benefits we'll be talking more in detail about on Wednesday. But basically, if you have insurance, you can have the option to choose the AmeriCorps Healthcare Allowance, and we'll reimburse you up to a certain amount for out-of-pocket expenses. But if you're one of the few people that are exempt from having to have insurance through the Affordable Care Act, you can participate in the AmeriCorps Health Benefit Plan. More details will be given on Wednesday. You can also visit vistacampus.gov/healthcare in the meantime, so that come Wednesday, you might have more questions to ask about that topic.
Yeah, definitely. I know we have another question in the chat about healthcare. How soon are we able to sign up? Once you're activated for service, your information gets sent to our health coverage provider, and they will send you an email with instructions for signing up. As soon as they have everything in line and you're actually a VISTA member in our system, they'll send you the instructions to sign up. Typically, I wouldn't say no more than 2 weeks from now will you be getting that email, so be looking out for that coming up.
A couple more really quick questions. Someone asked about life insurance. Yes, life insurance is very different from health coverage. If you choose to opt out of life insurance, log into your My AmeriCorps account, click on My In-Service Benefits, and you'll see life insurance. If you accept it, you enter a beneficiary. If you do not want it, you click on Waive, but it is under My In-Service Benefits in your My AmeriCorps account.
Totally. Let's see. I got Nadia here. I received an email saying that I did not complete the quiz and the onboarding forms, although I did. I go online to double check. It says I've completed it. Who can I talk to correct that? That's me. Nadia, reply to my email that I sent you with the forms, and I'll double check that for you, and I'll write you back, and we will make sure that you are all good to go.
The last question that I see up here is from Sarah, and she asks about travel reimbursement. Basically, when do they come? So Sarah, to answer your question, if you are relocating for service and approved for relocation, your settling in allowance will appear on July 1st with your first living allowance payment. That's the answer.
Yep.
So it should be July 1st.
Yep. Let's see, Gary Hauser, a transportation question. I'm not relocating, but have to travel a fair distance to get to the work site. As this fuel cost adds up, does VISTA provide any reimbursement for these costs? The VISTA program does not reimburse for work-related mileage, although your project might. That is a conversation to have with your project to say, hey, I'm doing, do you guys offer any sort of reimbursement? If they don't, the VISTA program can't really make them do that, so that's something that you kind of have to work out between you and your project.
And I realized I didn't misspoke, but I missed a critical element when I was responding to Sarah's question. If you, for relocating, the settling in allowance will be on July 1st, but the actual relocation travel allowance that was quoted to you in an email, that usually comes in about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 6 to 8 weeks from now. So the relocation travel allowance will take a little bit longer to get to you than your settling in allowance. But I do want to clarify that because there is a difference.
Cecilia is asking, she's a follow-up. Can you please address the name badge T-shirt question, please? We will talk about VISTA gear in the next webinar on Wednesday. So tune in on Wednesday, and we'll tell you all about it, how to go about getting a T-shirt and a pin, a lapel pin.
Calvin, here's a question you might know the answer to.
Okay.
I report to 2 people. One is on site, and the other is in another state who oversees my VISTA program statewide. How do I know which one is my supervisor?
I would ask them. I mean, that's honestly the most straightforward way. Hey, which one of you am I reporting to? Who's going to be giving me assignments? If I need to ask someone to double check some work, like who do I go to? I know it's your first day on your project, but obviously that's a very important question and something that you're going to want to clear up right off the bat, just so for your own personal peace of mind and so that there's no confusion later on. They'll be receptive to that conversation because they probably want to establish that relationship also. So definitely, just ask them. Say, hey, who am I reporting to? Who's my point of contact for my VISTA specific assignment?
That's a great answer. And I see one other question that came in from Siobhan about completing all the forms online, but someone emailed her stating I had to provide signed hard copies. Oftentimes, so for the VISTA program, you have to do all of your forms online in My AmeriCorps. But if you get an email saying you also need hard copies, oftentimes that means you're paid by a grant. So in addition to doing them online for us, you need to check with your supervisor or someone at your project to see which forms you might need hard copies of and go from there.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to check on the phone one last time, and then I think we'll wrap it up. So do we have anyone on the phone?
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1. One moment, please, for your first question.
And as we're waiting just another minute or two, I know Calvin mentioned earlier, since we will see you guys on Wednesday, we're excited to see you again. We'll also be having information about accomplishing your VISTA assignment in a little bit more detail about some of the topics and be able to answer additional questions there as well.
Yeah. All right. So I think there's really one more question that I see here that we haven't answered, so we can answer that, and then we'll call it. All right. So Brittany Moulton says, how do you opt out of life insurance? I can't seem to find it. Again, I go to your My AmeriCorps portal. On the left-hand side, you'll see in-service benefits. One of the boxes are going to be for life insurance. At the very bottom, you'll see a button that says Waive. You just click on the Waive button. It'll say, you know, are you sure you want to waive it? You just click Confirm, yes, save, whatever the option is, and that is how you opt out of life insurance. All right.
Those are some great questions.
Great questions. Again, if you think of anything between now and Wednesday, write it down. Ask your supervisor. Ask. You know, you can call the VMSU, you can call the National Service Hotline. There's a lot of things you can do to get answers to your questions. But if you think of anything that you want to bring to us, make sure that you write it down, save it for Wednesday, and we will be more than happy to answer questions there.
Calvin, sorry, really quickly, because this is an important question that just came in. Where do I make my minute intro? And I'm wondering about VISTA Campus. So the minute intro exercise we talked earlier, you'll get an email very soon with a link to your online classroom, and that's where you'll want to log in immediately, preferably today, and you can see the assignment. So you'll get an email about that. And then I'm wondering about the VISTA Campus. That's a separate website, vistacampus.gov. That's where you go to for more professional development. That's where you want to take your terms and conditions course. But everything should be pretty self-explanatory. As Calvin said, if there are questions, you can always contact your supervisor or your state office, especially for questions around that.
Yep. All right. Oh, one got assigned to us. Okay, this is really the last one.
Okay.
Marissa Johnson, is there any paperwork for receiving my travel reimbursement? Did you already answer this? No. Is there any paperwork for receiving my travel reimbursement besides just getting approved? There is. There's a voucher that you'll need to sign and return to the VISTA Member Support Unit in Austin. They should send you an email that says, hey, this is where you find your voucher. It's on the front page of your My AmeriCorps homepage. It'll be on the front. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it'll be attached there. It's a PDF that has the amount that you will be receiving, and you'll sign that and mail that in. Once you mail it in, it's about 4 to 6 weeks for your reimbursement to come through. Again, if you have questions about your reimbursement or where to find that, call the National Service Hotline, ask for the VMSU, and they will definitely give you more information than you can handle.
Well, this has been great. It's been great to talk to all of you, and we want to thank you all for your participation today. We also want to, again, welcome you to the VISTA program, wish you much success, and leave you with this final quote from Lyndon Johnson.
On your idealism and on your success rests much of our hope for the final elimination of poverty in our American life. Wise words, Lyndon Johnson, December 12th, 1964. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Again, we'll see you on Wednesday. Have an excellent rest of your first day of service.
Absolutely.